Welcome to Our College Your Voices. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. As the first program of its kind in Indiana, Advantage Shelby County is a collaboration between city and county government and Ivy Tech Community College. This program provides scholarship funding to qualified Shelby County students that pays tuition costs not covered by state, federal, or institutional aid. I am excited to have several community members as well as Ivy Tech folks here today to talk a little bit more about Advantage Shelby. So let's meet our panel. First up is Tom DeBon, Mayor of Shelbyville. Hi, Tom.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Would you talk a little bit more about what you do and how you came to be involved with Advantage Shelby County?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Tom DeBon, Mayor of the City of Shelbyville. I'm starting my third term, so I'm in my ninth year. Basically, I got involved because we had spent a significant amount of time looking at our shortcomings as a community because we knew that our trend was trending downward as far as population growth, and we started looking at indicators for that. The primary indicator that we saw was educational attainment post-secondary. And our concern was that because we're a manufacturing community, it would have an adverse impact on our ability to attract talent.
Excellent. Very good. And we'll go a little deeper into how the program started as we get started here. Next up is Stephanie Amos. Hi, Steph.
Good morning.
You have been a guest on the show before. It's good to have you back.
Thank you for having us.
I think you had just changed jobs when we aired the last time.
Probably, I had.
Would you tell us what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I'm a vice chancellor over our Shelbyville, Johnson County, and Mooresville locations. So that means I kind of manage the internal operations within those buildings as well as external partnerships and relationships.
Excellent. Welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here. Next up is Chris Hoke. And Chris, as I understand, you're the superintendent of Northwestern Consolidated School District of Shelby County, correct?
Correct.
Tell us a little bit more about what you do in your day job.
Well, Northwestern Shelby Schools is probably most familiar to people as Triton Central.
Okay.
And we're located in the northwest corner of the county, right on 74. And I'm superintendent of schools. We're a pre-K through 12 buildings, single campus, about 1,500 kids. And so I'm in charge of everything, basically. That's what it comes down to.
Every time I talk to public school folks, they know things about all sorts of crazy stuff that you wouldn't wonder. What's the most exciting thing you've gotten to work with as a superintendent?
The most exciting?
Or maybe the most unique that you never thought you'd get to deal with?
We have an incredible robotics program that started out rather innocently as a club with like 10 kids.
That's fantastic.
And it was going to be something that was recreational that is now fully blossomed into this very competitive national and actually world recognized program. And it really started with a passion from a teacher and a handful of kids. And so my role in that is simply just resourcing it and making sure they have what they need to be great.
That's exceptional. Wonderful. Welcome to the show. And Amy Carter. Hey, Amy.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. And you're the Assistant Director of Advantage Shelby. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Well, I process them, students, high school seniors, from the application process all the way to getting a fall schedule. And then we are the wraparound services for the student while they're at Ivy Tech. And then we help them to transition either to the workforce or to a four-year institution. So we kind of do a one-stop shop from high school year, senior year to when they graduate with us at Ivy Tech.
Excellent. Very good. So that's a segue to my first question. I think you started to hint at it there. Who does Advantage Shelby serve? Who's your target audience for this program?
Is this for anyone?
Yeah, anybody.
Well, I think it serves a multitude of people. It serves the student, because we're seeing a lot of first-gen college attendees. Mm-hmm. And I think just the inception of the program has caused people to look at college, which they may have not considered it before. It serves the community in the sense that we provide an alternative to people who may be looking at the community. If they're looking to relocate into Shelby County, this is an educational choice that they may take in consideration for their family. And then because of the curriculum that we've all developed, it serves our industrial and commercial base as well.
Very good. Very good. And how you alluded to this a little bit, Tom, so I'll ask you to build on it and then hopefully others will jump in. This was the first program of its kind in the state. How did you talked a little bit about the sort of the need that drove it, but what's the mechanics of how you got it started?
Well, it was basically the best thing about government is we can steal ideas from other successful communities. And so we looked at Tulsa, we looked at Tennessee, we looked at Kalamazoo and others. We had looked at other opportunities. We'd looked at a 529 program, which I think is called the Warsaw Promise, which they're doing up there. and we looked at some other things, but we felt that the biggest bang for our buck, if you will, was to impact post-secondary ed. That was a measurable demographic that we had seen through census data. The Public Policy Institute with Drew Klasick had helped us really kind of key in on that, as well as Ball State. And so that was something that resonated with our local employers. So we were looking for an opportunity to affect that directly and quickly. And so those examples that we saw in other states were the ones, that was the one that we settled on.
And Chris, for you, from the school district perspective, how has the Advantage Shelby program changed? How have you seen it change the outlook of students in your school district?
Well, as Tom alluded to, many, if not most of the students are first generation students, right? And so there is a certain fear of what we don't know. I think that's innate in human beings, right? We're leery of that we don't understand. And so it makes it accessible to a student group that maybe would not think about that. We pushed the program very, very hard, and I'd be remiss if I didn't give credit to the folks who are responsible for that. So our counselor, Jolene Lancaster, is phenomenal. We have a senior government teacher, Laura Duncan, who is a huge proponent and advocate for the program. And she has daily contact with the senior class. Mm-hmm. So to give you an idea, and Amy, you can help me with the statistics, but I think the fall 19 cohort, we had 50 out of roughly 100 seniors from our place applied, and we have, I believe, 20 that are actively in the program. So 20% of our senior class are pursuing post-secondary. Many, as if not most, as Tom said, first gen. So it makes it something that's not as scary. Mm-hmm. It makes it accessible to them. To me, Kara, one of the many great things about the program, and again, I came in, this was established, I've been at Triton 5 years. Mm-hmm. Program was already well on its way. The support network, and credit to Stephanie and the folks at Ivy. There's a support piece here that, frankly, I think, at least for our kids, is the difference between success and not being successful, in that it is new to them and it is a world they're not initiated into and do not understand necessarily. So that's been resourced by Ivy. There's a relational piece there that gets done, and that's not free. Okay, that costs money, that takes investment. But if you look at the graduation statistics of this program, well, the proof's in the pudding, as they say, right? So the data says that clearly works. That model's working. Mm-hmm.
And Amy, I know you've got some of those statistics. Would you share just some of the positive outcomes of Advantage Shelby with us?
We've grown. We've doubled in size from our first cohort to our fourth. The first one, we started with 46 students. The fourth cohort was 102. So we're still working on our fifth currently. Our first cohort, their graduation rate was 17%. Mm-hmm. Our second one was a fall 17 cohort. They graduated at 35%, 100% on time.
Fantastic.
And we're estimating our third, which should graduate in May and August of this year, they should be right at 45%.
That's fantastic.
So we're pretty excited about that.
Very good. And would you and Steph talk a little bit about the approach that Ivy Tech has taken to supporting these students? Because while we like to think that we offer all of our students these kinds of supports, I know there are some additional intentional things that you're able to do because of the partnership with Shelby County. Can you guys talk about that a little bit?
So I think part of my role is, like Chris mentioned, with his school district and particularly the robotics club, is to help resource and advocate internally for those resources for the program. Mm-hmm. You know, as Amy mentioned, the on-time graduation rate expected for this next cohort is, upwards of 45%. Mm-hmm. So that, like any of our wraparound cohorted programs, it takes additional resources to support that. Also, what sometimes is a challenge in this program that we are working really closely with is Shelbyville is not a full service campus. Right. So all those services aren't provided locally. Mm-hmm. So we're having to find unique ways to support those students at that location. Right. So they don't have to travel or drive, because like many of our students, they have transportation issues and things. So we're working towards that and making a lot of progress in that area.
I think that's, from my perspective, one of the most exceptional things about this program, because I know the Shelbyville campus is really pretty small. And so your ability to bring all those services to the students is really exceptional. I know it has to take a lot of creativity and a lot of thought in how you do that. So that's great. Amy, talk a little bit more about the support that you provide to the students and that they receive, the direct support they get.
Well, I will keep my idioms at bay today. There's a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails. That's a running joke with some of the students, that the number of emails, it becomes clutter after a while. They don't know what they don't know. Sometimes they get overwhelmed. So there's a lot of customer service, concierge type of a situation where we go to them, meet them where they are. We have an incredible community base where they do volunteer hours as part of the scholarship. And those volunteers at those different services, from our animal shelter to the Strand, to the public library, to Grover Museum, and the schools, they go back in and volunteer at their home schools. All of those folks kind of wrap their arms around these students, will say, how are you doing on your finals? How's this?
Good.
And so it all works together. The students have put in right at 9,100 volunteer hours to date.
That's incredible.
Hopefully we'll top 10,000 at the end of the semester.
Good.
But that all helps to support them. You know, it kind of, the old phrase is, it takes a village, and we have one, and it's working.
Yeah. Well, and what an advantage to the community as an economic development perspective. Not only are you educating your workforce through this program, but you're also building that sense of community pride in that workforce. That's exceptional.
Well, you know, one of the things that we've talked about for years in our community has been the concern that we lose our best and our brightest, that we've become a talent pipeline, not a talent attraction. And so by requiring these kids to get involved with a local not-for-profit, we hope that we give them a sense of ownership. And so if they become acquainted with Girls Inc. or the Boys Club or Grover Museum or wherever it may be, maybe they form an attachment there, and that's one more thing that maybe compels them to stay in the community. That's
excellent. I'm looking at a flyer from about the program, and the students have to do 10 hours of volunteer service a semester, as Amy alluded to. And they also have a local mentor to guide them. Is that different than the volunteer person? And can you talk a little bit? Amy's shaking her head, yes. So can somebody talk a little bit about how you use those mentoring relationships and how you find those mentors?
We find those mentors through community networking. The board reaches out, just word of mouth. So it's a very organic, not scientific matching process. I tease the students that it looks like an online dating app when I'm asking them questions for hobbies and philanthropy. We match for their intended career field first, and then we match for their intended transfer institution. And then we go down to home high schools, home communities, or hobbies, or where they like to volunteer. And we try to give them some sort of local footing so that there's a platform to start with. Sometimes it's wildly successful, and sometimes it just doesn't work. You have students that don't need it. We've not found that magic concoction like we have with the service hours, but it works. And we have some that are really great. We have some local law enforcement officers that I know it's that time of the month because I get a text from that individual. I talked to this one, I texted this one, I didn't hear back from this student. So it works. And we don't have a checklist like the Tennessee Promise does because we wanted them to have that organic relationship grown and based on those two individuals. So we're still growing in that sense, and we're still kind of working out the quirks and kinks with the mentoring. But it does work when it works, and then we still have room to grow with that.
Absolutely.
Can I add something to
Please.
that? From an education perspective, right? You and I, Amy, we talked about this just yesterday, actually. I think it's great, the service component and the mentor piece, because as Tom said, this is a very vivid example of a community investing in itself. And quite frankly, the youngest people in the community in turn investing back, right? This is an earned opportunity. This is not an entitlement, right? The kids in this program have, quote unquote, some skin in the game in this service hour piece. And so as an educator, one of the things I really like about that is it is a very vivid illustration of the idea that you are a part of something bigger than you, right? I have a friend that jokes that kids today are born with a cell phone in one hand and a vanity mirror in the other. And all right. And so when we live in a world of selfies and how many likes you have on social media, et cetera, I mean, I understand that. But I also understand that service to your community is something that's honorable. It's something that's noble. And this reinforces that going both directions. We don't always get that in today's world. That's one of the beauties of this program, right? It allows that lesson to be taught, and it's more than just from Amy. It's people in the community who are respected, who are successful, and who model what that looks like.
Yeah. Would you talk just a little bit more about the the changes you've seen, outcomes are great in data form, but it's also great in terms of just the culture. I'd love for particular community members, but I think our Ivy Tech folks as well. What have you seen as a change in the culture as you've been doing this program for a few years?
Well, I think from our perspective, what we're seeing is people who may not customarily have been excited about education are becoming excited about education. Culturally, we're also seeing this as an opportunity to engage a large group of people that aren't obvious choices for engagement in education. So local industry. Local industry in years past had been the ones who had been coming to us with their hand out saying, fix our problem. And now they're at the table being part of the solution. So not only are they helping us form the different curricula that we offer, and we're nimble and responsive to those needs, but they're also providing oversight. If you look at the executive leadership of the committee that runs this program, it's made up primarily of local industrial leaders because they understand, using Chris's term from earlier, they have to have skin in the game as well. And so that's a change. It's the community coalescing around a common problem. But then what has happened is we've because of the success of this program, we've had people come to us and say, okay, have you thought about early childhood? Have you thought about adult learners who don't have a high school diploma? And so from Advantage Shelby County, we created programs with Goodwill Industries and the Excel Center. We've created an early learning coalition to deal with our 0 to 5-year-olds. And so we're looking at the educational attainment and capabilities of our community holistically, but we've pulled in industry, healthcare, education, government, things that we've just never done before as a community.
That's wonderful. Inside the school, changes that you've seen? I know you weren't here when it started, but visible things you can see as a part of the program?
Well, let's start with the idea that education has always been the pathway to upward mobility. And that's certainly the history of this nation, and it's what makes this nation unique on a world stage, right? Yeah. It doesn't matter where you were born or whose family you were born into. You can accomplish just about anything you want with appropriate skill set. And so this has allowed for a group of our students to understand that this is a viable pathway for you. Like Tom said, for many of our kids, they're the first generation, and you don't know what you don't know. There isn't anyone having this discussion with them in their home. There isn't anyone reinforcing that this is important. And so what we've seen is it's very much a reality for a group of our students who quite likely would not even have contemplated it prior. It removes that barrier.
Right.
That's critical. I don't know why in our nation we wouldn't invest in the education of our young people. Right. That's a strategic advantage on the world economic stage. Only makes good sense to me that we take the barriers down.
But I think kind of in response to some of Chris's comments, the other thing that we've seen too is we've seen tangible results. Our post-secondary ed levels have grown over 7% in this brief period of time.
That's exceptional.
It is exceptional.
I think a lot of people might hear 7 and go, that's not much. But when you look at this data all the time, that's a huge jump.
Well, and we're very proud of that, and so we see that the success breeds success, and so that just encourages us to continue to move forward.
Right, that's exceptional. Talk a little bit about the funding component, because we've been talking about this. It's last dollar scholarship. So other communities that might be interested in doing this, how did you all come together to be able to do this?
Well, we'll talk about the government side, and then I'll let Amy and Stephanie talk about the Ivy Tech side, and Chris, certainly the school component. But Shelby County is blessed because we have a casino. Yep. And so we use those profit-sharing dollars for programs outside of daily operations. The county, I can't speak to their budgeting process, but from the city's perspective, we don't want to rely on those dollars for daily operations because at some point they could change or go away. So we look at those things for meaningful, impactful type programming, and this is one of those. And so the city and the county entered into an intergovernmental relationship wherein we've agreed to support this program, as you said, with last dollar in. And so once we did a interlocal agreement with Ivy Tech and made the lawyers happy, we sat down and actually did the handshakes. And so we had an agreement that once we met certain performance metrics, we would pay those those dollars, one of those being Amy's salary. Initially, we were going to take that salary on until we reached 50 students.
Right.
We thought 50 was a lofty goal,
Right.
and we blew that away rather quickly. And so now she's working on Ivy Tech's dime. But we've put in, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars we've paid in tuition to Ivy Tech, and it's been money well spent. But that comes from our gaming revenue.
Christy, you want to talk a little bit about the financial aspect of the K-12 side?
Well, I can tell you what the impact is to our families. You know, we talked about barriers to education, and obviously the cost of post-secondary education is a huge issue. And you know, if you watch the evening news and what's going on in different debates, that's a relevant topic. And
Right.
in some ways, it's a tax on future earnings. And so to lower that barrier of entry for students, particularly first-generation students, is enormous. And I think every parent, guardian of one of the kids in the program could tell you that's tangible, real impact to their family, right? It makes it possible.
Right.
It absolutely makes it possible. So from a funding component, the only thing I would add to what Tom talked about is I'm often asked, you know, is Indiana Grant a good community partner? And the answer is, without any question, yes, absolutely. Those are indirect dollars that benefit our families by having them in our community.
Right.
And again, ask the families of the students. I think they'd tell you they're blessed and glad to have Indiana Grant as a partner in our community.
I think from an Ivy Tech perspective, as the last few years and the unemployment rate in the state of Indiana is so low that many of our campuses have seen a drop in enrollment because of that. This program we've seen growth.
Right.
And I think not only because of the financial commitment that the city and the county have put in, but it's also the wraparound services that Amy provides specifically to those students. Like both Tom and Chris have mentioned, a lot of these are first generation. They don't know how to get through financial aid process. They don't know how to get through an advising session, what courses to take, where, when, how. And Amy does a tremendous job with that. And that's the key to this program, I believe.
Absolutely.
I found Falls dollars.
Yeah, that would be great.
The Advantage put in $186,108 towards tuition and fees, and the total amount through tuition and fees that was paid out for the fall 2019 was $287,627.
Excellent. And it's important to, I think, reiterate, these are last dollar scholars. So this is leveraging federal aid, state aid first, and then the community is funding the rest of it. And there's a lot of movement in Indiana around legislation to have every student complete the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. And that is an important part of this process too, to make sure that we're helping students understand how they can make college affordable. So I applaud you for that.
I think one of the things I'd like to add regarding education is, from the outside, not being an educator, watching the guidance counselors. It's been fun to watch them engage on a different level. I can't speak to what their traditional roles are. I don't live in that world. But when we have our meetings, when Amy talks to the school counselors at the different school corporations, it's fun to see that healthy competition on which school had sent, what number of students. I graduated from Southwestern High School. Stephanie is a Shelbyville High School graduate. We have members of the board who went to the representative schools. So it's fun to kind of good-naturedly poke at each other and say, hey, why didn't Waldron send X number of kids? So it's been fun to watch that happen too. It motivates them, I think, as well.
Well, and Amy and Stephanie have both talked to me about how engaged your board is. So I want to give just deep appreciation on behalf of Ivy Tech from me as well. To have such an engaged board, I know makes a difference. Could you talk a little bit more about the board membership, who's on it, and what their role is in the program?
We've got local superintendents. We have voting members and non-voting members. We have 5 voting members. The county council shares. There are 2 spots and they share a vote. So if somebody can't go, we always have another representative. The city council has the same. They share a vote. We have 2 industry representatives, and then we have a superintendent who sit on the board. So we have 5 voting members, and then we have a panel of non-voting members, Mayor Stephanie and I, another superintendent from another school, some other Runnebaum Construction has a member on that. And they were all part of the initial talks and the development of the scholarship. So they provide historical, they provide input, they provide guidance, but the board meets every other month. And I can tell you from attending some of the PromiseNet scholarships conferences that I by far have the most outstanding board of anybody, because they're willing to let you fail and not condemn you for it. They're like, okay. And that has a certain comfort so that, well, let's go try it. Okay, go ahead. And that to me is great. And the support, you ask them, hey, can you come and do this? Sure. What time do you need us there?
Right.
And they're always there. They're always supportive. You ask them a question, they respond. It's a really incredible work opportunity.
Yeah, Amy talked about meeting once every other month. The matter of the fact is that we communicate almost daily. Stu Kaplan, who is our board chair, runs a company called Makuta Techniques, and they're a micro-injection molding company. So they make little bitty bits of things that go in your body. So he's a very detail-oriented person. So I'm getting emails and phone calls from Stu daily on this program, as well as our early learning program, because he's involved in that as well. And so even though we only formally meet 6 times a year, we're communicating almost daily on this. And in regards to the opportunity to fail, I think that's huge for us because we do understand that this is a new thing. We understand in many cases we're making it up as we go. And when you use tax dollars or you're operating in the public eye, the ability to fail is very limited. But in this case, we've done a very good job of keeping the politics out of this because we know it's for the greater good. And so, as Amy said, we have given her great latitude and we have allowed her to hit the reset button when it needs to happen.
That's excellent. That's excellent. My last question for you today is what's next for Advantage Shelby?
Well, from the government's perspective, it's being responsive. As the student need evolves, we need to evolve. I assume at some point in time, using Chris's example, we'll have to get past the cell phone and the vanity mirror and figure out better ways to engage the kids. But we'll also, with the advances in technology on the industrial side, we'll be seeing new vocations that don't currently exist. And so we'll have to be ready to respond to those. We'll also be looking at ways to bolster the way in which we connect. We're working with KSM Consulting right now on a project that would create a virtual platform where it's a clearinghouse for industry, education, this program, and others to communicate. And so we'll again be bringing new people to the table who aren't there now. So we'll see, I hate to say unlimited growth potential through that, but opportunities that don't currently exist.
Excellent.
I know that we're trying to work on soft skills with the students, make them a more well-rounded individual when they exit. The board's been very gracious with their support monetarily and otherwise. They've attended some of these. We do a leadership day. We've attended the Indiana FFA Center, and we've outgrown that facility. So we're having discussions with a few other facilities so that we can host all of our students, which should round about 200 this coming fall, so that we can work on those soft skills, communication, team building. I think that's important. We're also adding a career fair component to the registration process. We've started small. We did the manufacturing group. We've expanded now to criminal justice and nursing, first responders. Hopefully, as we continue to grow, we can expand that into business and education so that each student that comes through the registration process can attend that career fair with those opportunities that are currently present inside Shelbyville and Shelby County.
So from an Ivy Tech perspective, I think, we just need to continue to be a great partner and whatever the vision is of the community, we need to be there and help with that lift of the educational attainment. I do want to say one thing on a personal note. I am from Shelby County. I live in Shelbyville, and this program, my son is not in the program, but he has a friend. He graduated high school last year. And if it was not for this program and for not only the financial, but the wraparound service, he is a first generation, highly intelligent, and he's going to be successful and get out of that cycle of poverty because of this program.
That's wonderful.
Well, from a board member's perspective, it's what Amy talked about. It's the mentor piece. I vividly remember as a young person learning what the business of business looked, sounded, and felt like. And I had to have that demonstrated to me by people in my life who were maybe not direct members of my family, right? And so I think there's a huge opportunity for us to do that. And then from the educator standpoint, the 4 county superintendents, of which I'm one, we've had a conversation, but we need to continue and ramp up the education and awareness piece of this with our families and our students so that they are aware of what this really unique opportunity is that sits in front of them. And so I look for more engagement with that on our side as a superintendent with my peers.
Excellent. Well, we end every one of our episodes with a call to action, and I'll offer 2. One of them, I think if you live in the Shelby County area and you want to become involved with the program, I think Amy, you would be the best person to contact.
Yes.
Okay. So if you're interested in that, please reach out to Amy. And Amy, would you give us your Ivy Tech email address?
It's acarter, ACARTER 224 at ivytech.edu.
Excellent. And I think if other communities around the state or around the country, I don't know how broad our listenership is. I know some folks listen outside of Indiana, want to learn from what you did. Would there be somebody they should contact?
I think Amy would be the point of contact. And then from that point, she can decide who needs to reach out.
Good. Well, I commend you for the work you've done. I've had a lot of fun learning about this program, preparing for this episode, and hope that we'll have you back on. Maybe we'll feature some of your students at graduation time. I think that would be a good idea to think about. So we'll figure out how to do that, Amy. Thanks again to everybody who's listening for joining this episode of Our College, Your Voices. I want to thank the members of the panel today. Tom, Amy, Stephanie, and Chris, thank you all so much. It was a lot of fun to learn about the program. I'm your host, Kara Monroe. You can connect with me on Twitter at KNM Tweets. You can reach us by email at ourcollegeyourvoices@ivytech.edu. Don't forget, you can also leave us a voicemail at 317-572-5049. Don't forget, if you're an Ivy Tech faculty or staff member, you can join our Microsoft Teams listener community. Just open up Teams, go to the Join a Team button, and find the listener community. It's the Our College, Your Voices listener community. Our website is ivytech.edu/podcast. Production assistance for this and every episode provided by Becky Campbell, Sarah Ferguson, and the Ivy Tech Community College marketing team. And our podcast concept is by Matthew Pittman. Theme music, recording, and post-production services provided by the incredible Jen Edds at the Brassy Broadcasting Company. And we will talk to you next time on Our College, Your Voices.